G'day and welcome to the Game Day Squad NRL Fantasy Show. I'm Dill, that's Stu, and we are the Fantasy Bros. We are back again, partnering with Game Day Squad to bring you all you need to know to succeed in GDS Rugby League in the finals edition. Stu, mate, we only have 4 teams remaining and 2 massive preliminary finals this week. Fresh off a massive prize card draft for 2025. Really pumped after that show, but there is still plenty to play for both in the NRL and on Game Day Squad. Before we jump into positional analysis, mate, how did you go in the second week of finals?
Yeah, g'day Dill, g'day viewers, g'day listeners. Yeah, mate, that prize card draft on Sunday was some very good fun. There were plenty of great picks, but also a couple of head scratches as well. We'll see if those picks pay off for some of those coaches next season. So if you missed that, jump onto the Game Day Squad YouTube channel after tonight's show and see which players were claimed in that draft. It was plenty of fun and looking to see how those cards go next season. Mate, in terms of round 2 of the finals, I had a pretty good week. I had a poor week 1, you might remember, but bounced back into the winner's circle quite nicely in week 2. Finished first in Challenger by, I think, 1 solitary point. 6th in Champion, 10th in Classic. So it's nice to finally see my name on the leaderboard after not being on any of them after week 1. How did you go?
Yeah, well done, mate. Good work on the first in Challenger. Obviously, that got you a few prizes there as well. Unfortunately for me, the best that I could come up with last week was 17th in Challenger. I think I just diversified my players a little bit too much across different competitions, and it meant that I didn't really have a team that had all the big scorers together in one game. So sort of chasing my tail a bit. But when you flick over to the seasonal rankings for the finals, remember there is also a prize for that as well. Both you and I are sitting pretty nicely in the Challenger competition at the moment in 9th and 11th respectively. And we're about less than 100 odd points away from the top there. So anything can happen over the next couple of weeks. This week in particular, we've still got 4 teams vying for a spot in the grand final. And obviously you and I are vying for that spot at the top.
The only issue is it's going to be really hard finding some pods, isn't it? You and I have just looked across each other's teams and we've got almost an identical starting 18 minus maybe 1 or 2 positions in our main team. So yeah, it'll be trying to find some ways to diversify, to get a couple of pods against some of those players ahead of us, but not to take too many risks and drop down the rankings. So a nice little strategic play for those final 2 weeks. And I think it's an NRL All-Stars card, a Rugby League All-Star card for the winner of each of those competitions. So everyone, you can see that Dill and I, as well as plenty of our viewers, are continuing to have a lot of success in Game Day Squad Rugby League. And you can too. You can get your mates involved and get them involved simply by signing up at the website, or downloading the app, creating an account and using our code FBRL25. They can still win some weekly prizes for the remaining 2 weeks of the competition. And then they can get straight into some cricket. And there's some basketball and some football happening at the moment as well. So just because the rugby league season is finishing doesn't mean Game Day Squad takes a break for 6 months. It just gives us an opportunity to look ahead at some other sports. So get yourselves involved, get your friends involved, use the code FBRL25. And if you haven't already, make sure you're following us across our socials, particularly on Instagram, our YouTube channel, TikTok as well. And if you can, while you're at it, while you're watching us on YouTube, give us a quick like as well. We want to see if we can keep getting some more and more likes on each and every show that we do.
Yeah, and talking about our socials, look, we have jumped across to Facebook. I know we're a little bit late to the party there, but we thought we'd tie everything up to have all of the socials across the board the same. And to kick that off, we've got a massive giveaway as well, and it wouldn't be a Fantasy Bros end of season party if we didn't have a massive giveaway. Over on Facebook, head over there now. The link is in the description for the YouTube on our YouTube channel. So head to the link there. Comment on the post that who will you play in the next round of Game Day Squad post. Comment, show your team for the next round across any of the sports that you are playing this week in Game Day Squad, whether that be rugby league, whether it be the Aussie Rules Grand Final, maybe the AFLW, whatever takes your fancy. Post your team in there, tag 3 mates, make sure you include your team name from GDS, and you'll be in the draw to win some awesome prizes. If you head over to Facebook, we've got a bit of a prize structure unlock style where the more people that comment or the more coaches that comment, the more prizes we can give away, and the better the prize is at the end. So make sure you go check it out after this show as well. We also have a bit of other news that we might get to a little bit later in the show, just to keep people excited about the off season, or that little break between the end of the rugby league and the start of Big Bash. Alrighty, the other thing that we always talk about is a little bit of a look at the matchup for this weekend. So before we jump into our player analysis, let's take a look at the finals matchups. As I said, we've only got 4 teams left. We've got that big clash on Friday night, the Melbourne Storm up against the Cronulla Sharks. And then we've got that Sunday afternoon feast of the Broncos against the Panthers at Suncorp Stadium. Mate, where do you think these are going to fall? Is it just going to be simply the favourites get up, or is it going to be another twist and turn in the final series?
Yeah, gee, there's been a couple of upsets in finals footy. Typically, favoured teams do tend to get the job done, but we've already seen 2 or 3 upsets, and the more favoured team lose, and we saw that unfortunately last weekend for the mighty Green Machine. We got Sif Kanga in the chat. Howdy, let's get rowdy as always. Good to see you, mate. And Skip's joined us as always. Again, g'day Skip. Thanks for joining us. Melissa's here too. Hey Melissa, thanks for jumping on the stream once again. Yeah, Dill, 2 crackers, I think, this weekend. Obviously, we've got the Friday night and the Sunday game. I'm hearing it's going to be very cold down there in Melbourne, particularly for a mid-September or a late September afternoon or evening. It's going to be about 16 degrees. It's going to be pretty chilly, and there might be a bit of rain about. So I'm seeing that one probably being a little bit closer, a little bit more sort of a middle forward dominated battle, and probably some skills of the crafty outside backs might need to get the job done for their team in a close one and low scoring. Well, I think Sunday, 4:00, we're going to have to wait all weekend for this one, but I think this one's going to be an absolute cracker. It should be beautiful weather Sunday afternoon. Both of these teams play fantastically well in the afternoon. We've seen evidence of that in the previous 2 weeks, or the previous 2 games that these teams have played. Both are putting on some outstanding attacking football performances. So, yeah, I can see this one being free-flowing, pretty open. I expect attack to be at the forefront for this match. And it's probably going to come down to 1 or 2 key plays. Maybe it's a key missed tackle or a key error that might determine this fixture. So, yeah, we get the Saturday off to sit back and watch the AFL Grand Final. Let's hope the Lions get up in that one. But, yeah, I think Sunday afternoon is going to be the match of the round. And for some people, they're saying it's probably the grand final come 1 week early.
Yeah, I probably tend to agree with you that matchup Sunday should be unreal at Suncorp as well. So they should fill that up. Really interested to see what Ganners is referring to. He's commented and said the NRL post on the Sharks today leaked the script.
Yeah,
look, I'd love to.
I actually saw that on Twitter, on X, and then I saw a few people talking about that, and then all of the posts that they were referring to as being the script had all been deleted. So, yeah, a bit of conspiracy going around there. Ganners, if you want to drop a bit more info into the chat, let us know. But, yeah, I did see a bit of that. I was just a bit too late to actually see what that script looked like. So help us out if you can, Ganners.
Unreal. And look, in terms of who I think in the games, I think the Storm should wrap it up quite nicely. And look, as much as I don't want the Panthers to win, I think they're just too good at this finals footy. I did read a stat as well that Reece Walsh has never beaten the Panthers. So there's a bit of hoodoo there for our man Walshy to try and get past potentially on Sunday as well. So it could be a big game there. But yeah, I just think the grand final is probably going to be between those 2 teams. So we've sort of talked about all season as being the front runners for the tournament, and in terms of the Storm and the Penrith Panthers.
Yeah, and add on to that stat, Nathan Cleary hasn't lost a day game, a game played during the day since 2019, before we even knew that dreaded virus starting with C existed, old COVID, that wasn't even around when Nathan Cleary last lost his day game way back in 2019. So if you're a stats man, which obviously Dill and I both are, if you read into the stats, it's pretty promising there for Penrith fans.
Yeah, unfortunately for some of us, but as I mentioned on the prize card draft show, great news for my son, who absolutely frothed the Panthers for some reason. Alrighty, let's get into our player analysis. As always, we're kicking it off with the hookers, and we've got 4 there, and I think there's just one name on everyone's lips, and that is Blake Brayley. I don't really see any way around not having him in your side. He's the highest averaging hooker remaining in the competition. And look, we've been fans of his pretty much all year, and he finds his way into my side again, like he has pretty much every week. The Storm have only allowed an average of 30 to hookers, which I think from the top 8 sides, which I think is a little bit concerning. But I mean, when Brayley manages to score 41.5 and 45 against them in round 17 and round 11, respectively, I think there's no way that he's not going to do something similar again, particularly from his base stats. And then we've seen his running game as well, just sort of complement what he does with his tackles and with his, with those nice short balls at the line potentially as well.
Yeah, I see Blake Brayley being a very popular play, but it doesn't mean we can't play Harry Grant. Obviously, we'll probably talk about why we're favouring Brayley over Grant. But I think some coaches will go the double hooker route this week, given that we don't have too many options in the middle and edge forward position. I think Harry Grant is a pretty good shout as well, given that the game is likely to be a little bit closer due to the weather. But yeah, it's that tackle efficiency and the fact that Brayley gets through plenty more tackles and misses fewer tackles than Harry Grant. Grant's probably got that higher upside, but if we are expecting that tight battle, if that does happen, then we're probably relying on those base stats a little bit more, and that's what Blake Brayley offers a little bit better than what Harry Grant can produce. In the finals matches so far, Brayley's had scores of 41-66. He's had tackle counts of 35 and 61. He's missed 3 tackles in total. Grant scored just the 30 back in week 1 against the Dogs. He did only miss 1 tackle, which is really good for his standards. He made 40 in that game as well. Yeah. So I'll find a spot for Grant in 1 or 2 of my teams, and maybe pair him with Blake Brayley in 1 or 2 of them as well. But I'm just going back to safety and Blake Brayley and try to find maybe a pot or 2 elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to talk about in terms of Grant, and the reason why we're probably not as high on him as we've been in the past. And look, he finished the regular season with an average of 4 missed tackles per game, and you don't want that in this finals competition, as we're talking about trying to make up 100 odd points as well as potentially win a round. You don't want those negatives hanging over your head. Although in saying that, there are obviously a couple of spots on the bench for some forwards, and there aren't many edges that we want to play, and there's a couple of middles that we're keen on, but there's also opportunity there, like Sif Kanga has done, and is going to play the double hooker in Grant and Brails. And I'm sort of leaning that way myself, because Grant maybe has a little bit more upside than maybe 1 or 2 of the other middles that we're going to talk about. But yeah, I think those are the main 2. Outside of that, we've got Corey Pakes lining up for the Bronx, and then Mitch Kenny lining up for the Panthers. Neither of them really see that 80 minutes and never really have that 80 minutes on the field. So it's hard to look at both of those players. Mitch Kenny, if someone was to want to go a bit of a risk, maybe Mitch Kenny up against the Broncos. They've allowed the highest average to hookers of all the top 8 sides, 36.7. So there's an opportunity there, although Schneider's been coming off the bench and doing a pretty poor job at imitating a hooker. It still means that Kenny, has a bit of a spell, and we don't see as many minutes from him.
Yeah, mate, not as exciting there in the hooker position, unfortunately, with just those 4 options. So let's get into the middles, because we've got probably 2 locks, and I think most coaches will opt with Payne Haas and Isaiah Yeo again. They were part of the big 3, obviously, alongside Terrell May. All season long, whenever they were named, we were finding ways to plug them into our team and obviously loading up in terms of salary on Payne Haas. But it's quite interesting where coaches are going to take, obviously, their next middle forward spot and then the makeup of their bench. I'm actually going to load up on middle forwards this week. I think I'm going to play 2 on the bench in my main squad, meaning no Harry Grant and no edge back rowers on my bench either. And I like a number of those names on the board. Let's start with Isaiah Yeo's teammate in Lindsay Smith. I said last week that he was getting a bit more time on field, and whenever he's got the bigger minutes, he's turning those into GDS points. Now, his score on the weekend obviously didn't look too flattening, and nor did his minutes on the park. But look, I think there's a pretty good reason for that, and we got to remember 12 tries were scored on Sunday afternoon. There were 70 NRL points scored, meaning the ball obviously wasn't in play for long periods of time. Players were standing under the goalposts for long periods of time while goals were being kicked. And that obviously means less time on the park for blokes like Lindsay Smith to get through his base. Given that the Panthers were well ahead as well, it probably gave Ivan Cleary a bit more of an opportunity to give some of his bench forwards some more game time in case they need to get through those minutes either this week or next week if they get to the grand final. Say a HIA or an injury occurs during the game and they need the blokes like IPAP to get through some bigger minutes. I think that's a big reason why maybe Lindsay Smith's minutes and score doesn't look that good. So I'm happy to look past that and hope some other coaches see that and go, oh, no, he's probably not a good choice. I think this game, like we said, it should be pretty open and free-flowing, but I don't think there's going to be 70 points scored. I don't think he's going to be standing under posts or watching Nathan Cleary kick goals for as long as he did last Sunday. Particularly if this game's nice and close, it's Isaiah Yeo, the 1-2 punch there with Lindsay Smith, and we know that Lindsay Smith can break tackles, he can offload. I really like him as a play, and maybe even that third best middle for me ahead of a couple of other guys on the list there.
Okay, yeah, that's a big call, and him being the third best middle when we've got a couple of blokes on that list as well that we're going to talk about. And yeah, I'm in two minds. I tend to agree that it's a bit concerning. He did get that 48 minutes and it only resulted in 38 points. But like you said, there's a whole number of reasons when you do watch the game and you have eyes on it to know why that's the case. And if you just look a week before that against the Warriors, he had 55 minutes and scored 60 GDS points. So we definitely have seen that he can go the distance in terms of that sort of 55 to 60 minutes, and then he can rack up those points quite easily and get to that point per minute or above. So it's definitely an option. I guess for me, there might not be as much upside as potentially playing Harry Grant over him. We have seen Harry have that attacking upside potentially, and I guess it's weighing up my options between, do I want to take that risk on the tackle break, the missed tackles that Harry makes or doesn't make versus Smith that we know is going to be pretty consistent. And if his floor's 38 and his ceiling is 60 plus, then you're locking that in for sure. Whereas we've seen some pretty low scores from Harry when he's missed a number of tackles throughout. So yeah, for me, I'm in two minds at the moment between Lindsay Smith and Harry Grant, leaning towards Lindsay Smith though, being that second middle that's on my bench, as you say. In terms of the other middle that I really like is Addin Fonua-Blake this week. And I talked about him last week as well, and he hasn't really been someone that we've been super high on. But when having a look at some of his stats, he's actually averaged 55.5 against top 8 sides this season. So in terms of his scoring rate, it actually slightly increases when he comes up against a more dominant side compared to some of the bottom 8 sides where they were sort of rolling over the top of quite easily. The thing for me as well, if you have a look at Addin Fonua-Blake's last couple of games, he's had a 34 against the Roosters, which wasn't great, but then he had that 63.5 against the Raiders. The other thing, he's played Storm twice this year and he's come away with an average of 64. So I feel like, again, he steps up for those big games and we know he can average 60 odd in base and power alone, and then potentially adding a try on top of that, which we've seen, him cross the line 6 times this season in the regular season. I think there's some really good upside there for Addin Fonua-Blake against a Storm side who, love to play through the middle and then look to go wide. I think the Sharks will do something similar as well.
Yeah, I like him, given that other than Payne Haas, he's probably the one middle forward available that's got the highest upside in terms of finding the try line and scoring a try. So, yeah, he'll be in my team. I'm just not super convinced. Like the numbers you just rattled off there about his averages against the Storm and other top 8 sides are fantastic. And, yeah, maybe it is a fact that he gets up for it, maybe has a bit more of a role and, has more of a responsibility against some of those bigger teams, and therefore his stats certainly reflect that. For me, I don't want to get too carried away with the 66 from last week, the 66 minutes, of course. We saw Tommy Hazelton go down after just 4 minutes and he was ruled out, obviously. So they played with 16 for the rest of that match, which whenever someone goes down from the middle forward rotation, it just means the other middles get a bit of an uptick and a bump in minutes. So I don't see him getting 66 minutes again this weekend, although he certainly proved that he can get out on the park for that long and against a pack like the Raiders, which is one of the bigger packs in the competition. He's obviously proved that he can go the distance if required. He might not be required for those amount of minutes, so I think we might be relying on a try for him to have a score, mid-50s above 60 again. But like we said a few times, it's a really difficult week in terms of are you going for upside, are you going for safety? He probably provides that safety with a little bit of upside. If the game's close or they need a bit of, an injection of power and speed through the middle, then he's their guy and they're going to throw him on and go down swinging.
Yeah, and let's hope that he does cross over for a try. And if that's the case, then Brayley gives him a short ball for him to get over and we're all cheering. I guess the other thing we've got to consider is that, if we just play safe with our middles, then we know we can sort of be a little bit more funky with our centres and our wingers, which we're going to talk about a little bit later as well, where there's a few more options out there that I think with only the 4 teams available, you really got to consider those options that are going to score you those points. And if it's the same as other coaches, then maybe there's some opportunity to put some salary on someone like an Adam Fanua-Blake and Payne Haas, where they're going to be pretty much 100% played this weekend. So there's always those opportunities, as well as not overthink and just play some smart footy and get some salary on some of those guys that they're going to be well owned. Someone that I don't know if he's going to be well owned or not. I'm really not sure where I sit with the thought of him, but Uda Ikamanu is someone that I think he's been a bit of an enigma throughout most of the season. He's kind of flown under the radar quite a lot this year, and coaches not often looking at him. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago where JT mentioned him on the stream in the comments, and it was probably the first time I really dug deep into his stats. He's just been sort of someone that I haven't really considered. But when I looked at his scores against top 8 sides, he's averaged 50 GDS points, which is slightly higher than a lot of those other sort of mid-tier type props that we sort of have, that can have a big game and then sort of fade away and then maybe come back and have 1 or 2 more big games. The outlier, obviously, for Uda Ikamanu is the 95.5 point game that he had in the first week of the finals against the Bulldogs. For me, the thing is, though, he averaged 43 minutes on the field throughout the regular season. We obviously saw an increase in minutes against the Dogs in 54. He's had some 60-minute games as well. So I guess it's going to be whether or not he stays on the park for that long. And I guess it's the same as Fanua-Blake and even Smith to an extent, is how many minutes do these blokes get in these tight battles where there's a lot of work through the middle and then potentially a lot of tired forwards missing tackles as well.
Yeah, that score in week 1 was outstanding, wasn't it? The 4 offloads and 14 tackle breaks on top of the 35 tackles and 150 run meters provide some massive upside for someone that can get through plenty of work. I think why I really like him as a play this week is maybe I'm not expecting 14 tackle breaks, or certainly not expecting 14 or 4 offloads, but he has broken 8 tackles on 2 occasions. He's reached the double digits once prior to the 14. So it wasn't just a flash in the pan or once making so many tackle breaks. He's done it before. And for me, the Storm are potentially running out of less than 100% healthy Pappenhausen, but certainly Jerome Hughes. If either of those don't go the full distance, like Hughes obviously in week at the end of the regular season, if Pappy has an injury concern, or if any other normal injury or HIA occurs in the match, they're going to need to find some minutes from someone, because they've obviously got Wishart there who can fill in the halves or the backs mostly, and maybe a few minutes at lock there. But they're probably going to need some bigger minutes out of blokes like Stefano, given that their other bench forwards don't get through too many themselves. So, yeah, I think there's plenty of safety involved in his 35 tackles, 150 run meters, 50 points, you beauty. But maybe when he knocks out 4 or 5 tackle breaks, maybe an offload or 2, and sees a few extra minutes, then I think he's going to put together a nice score once again.
Yeah, I really like it. And yeah, like you say, I guess at the end of the day, if he doesn't break those 6 tackles and we still see him get through that base, then we know we've got 40 to 50 points that, the floor there, and there's some upside as well. So I really like the Uda Ikamanu shout. Stephen looking like he's just going for the 1 middle this week. He's just going to lock in Yo and just leave it at that. I'm not sure.
He's confident.
Stephen, you might need to get a couple other middles around Isaiah Yo there. Good on you, mate. Thanks for joining us. Alrighty, let's jump across to the edges, and we're pretty sold on just 2 particular edges this week. There's not a whole lot of options really outside both Ali Katoa and Jordan Ricky. I think Ali Katoa is probably on everyone's minds as well, and that might be an opportunity to put some salary on again. He's been elite pretty much the whole season. He's averaged 54.5 in the regular season, then capping it off with that 72.5 against the Dogs in week 1. He's matching up against the Sharks this week, and that team's been pretty vulnerable to right side edge attackers in the top 8 as well. They've allowed an average of 50 to that position. So if Katoa can do something similar to what he's done in the past against the Sharks, where he's averaged 51 in their earlier matches, I think there's some big upside for Ali Katoa. Obviously, as you touched on, the question mark's going to remain over Hughes and what his impact's going to be in the game. But we did speak on that draft show that really Katoa's dominance doesn't really matter whether he's got those top players around him or not. He seems to have big games without the likes of Munster, Hughes or Pappenhausen necessarily in the side as well. So I think if we do lose Hughes or maybe he doesn't line up for this match, I think Katoa is still a massive shout.
Yeah, I also think, given that I don't think there's any way that he can be 100% fit for this match. He's got that lingering shoulder issue that's been an issue all season long. If he gets one bad knock on it, he'll be favouring it for the rest of the game. So I think they're going to run plenty of traffic his way, which means that's awesome for Eli Katoa and his tackle numbers. But B, I don't think he's going to be wanting to run or take on the line as much as he normally would, and risk, falling on that shoulder or getting some bumps, because the other team, the Sharkies, will certainly know about it, and the Sharkies will certainly be testing it out. So he also had that forearm or that wrist fracture, so he can't be 100% fit, meaning Katoa is going to have to help out with the tackling, but also Hughes is probably more likely to sort of shovel that ball onto him before getting into the line or even close to the line, rather than stepping or trying to go over one of the halves himself. He's probably going to more likely tip that ball on to his outside, which is that man, Eli Katoa. So he's been scoring really well without him. He scored well with him. I don't see any real regression either way. I just think he's an outstanding player, and he should be about 100% owned, given that we don't have too many options for this edge forward position.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. The other player, obviously, that we're looking at is Jordan Ricky, and it's hard not to go past him after we just watched Jacob Preston absolutely dominate that left side defence of the Panthers. He's scoring 104, so I expect Ricky to get plenty of ball, and we obviously see Reynolds back in the picture as well for the Broncos. Ricky's averaged 46 GDS points against top 8 opposition throughout the regular season and finals, so the concerning thing for me is Ricky's got some really low scores in him. And one of those low scores was 27.7 last time against the Panthers, last time they played them. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about that potentially happening again. On the other side, though, the last 3 games that he's played against top 4 sides, Ricky's averaged almost 60 points, and that's from round 18 through the first week of the finals. So, and once again, maybe he's a player that steps up against those top 4, those bigger sides, and has a bigger game. And obviously, they're going to need it this week, the Broncos against the Penrith Panthers, and what they can deliver. The good thing, I guess, is the Panthers have been pretty vulnerable to that right side, and from the top 8, and allowed 56.5 GDS points to those right edges this year. So for me, I see plenty of upside in Ricky, and I guess we just got to remember in the back of our minds that he's got a potential for a 25 or 30 if it doesn't play out the way that we expect it to, and maybe they continue to go left because Reynolds is just not up to scratch. Obviously, coming off a hammy injury, it's not a great opportunity for him to return into the fire straight away against the Panthers as well. So, yeah, you just probably in the back of your mind think, look, Ricky's one of the better options than what we've got from our edges, and he can either have a 60-point game or a 25-point game, or somewhere in between. So if you give yourself that sort of buffer, then you can't be disappointed at the end of the day once Ricky comes off that park.
Yeah, I agree with that. We know that the Broncos are going to favour their left side attack. That's no secret, obviously, but they'll be silly not to fire a few shots at that right-hand side, even if going there a couple of times before shifting the ball left, given how much success the Bulldogs had there on the weekend. They're obviously going to test out Blaise Talangi a lot, given his defensive weaknesses, particularly in finals matches. So, yeah, I still think Ricky will get through plenty of base, and it's probably more so a lack of other options. Liam Martin, Teague Wilton, Isaiah Papali'i, all decent options, but all got plenty of negatives themselves. IPAP's been fantastic, but he's been scoring tries, and he's only getting about 40 minutes or 44 minutes off the bench as well. So, yeah, look, it's a tough one. I think some coaches might go a little bit different in this position, but going someone like a Martin or an IPAP and they only return a 25, whereas Ricky punches out a 60 in base, that could make a big difference to your squad. So, again, it's probably a bit of a safe pick with a little bit of upside, given the success we saw the right side of the Bulldogs have last week.
Yeah, and look, if coaches are looking at some of those other players, the Storm and Broncos, they both allow 40 and 41 to left and right edges, respectively, to top 8 sides this season. So there is still some opportunity there. The downside probably is Burns, Martin, and Sorensen all score around, or all average around 37 GDS points against top 8 sides. Maybe T. Wilton's probably the only one that you might look at. He's averaging 45 against top 8 sides. So, yeah, for me, I probably won't be going near them. But, yeah, if you're looking at one of those 4, maybe Wilton's the answer. And as you said, Papali'i off the bench, he's averaged 44.5 GDS points averaging less than half of a footy. So I think he's, like you said, about 45 minutes across the 2 games. So if you're want to take that risk like Sif Kanga is, and he's going to play Katoa with that man, Papali'i,
Nice.
or good luck to you. I'd just be a little bit concerned that, less than 40 minutes on the park or 45 minutes on the park is not ideal for someone like Papali'i as well. He's pretty dominant when he does come on the field, and we've seen some massive games from him when he does play a whole 80 minutes of footy too. So it would be great to see him get to something like that. But I know Ivan Cleary obviously likes to use him with that big power game as he comes off the bench, sort of that 20-minute mark, 25-minute mark, and while there's some tired players around.
Speaking of Cleary, the halves position, for me, pretty straightforward one this weekend, with obviously Nathan Cleary heading that list, and probably a lot of coaches will be wanting to put plenty of salary on him. Not because we're necessarily expecting another 40-point score for the Panthers against the Broncos, but we are expecting a pretty open game. Should be plenty of points being scored, and Nathan Cleary obviously steps up in these types of matches. I don't want to bring it up too frequently, but if the Panthers are down like they were in that 23 grand final, they look to one man, and that's Nathan Cleary. So when they're behind, he just does absolutely everything he can to get the team back into the game, and if they're in front, it's usually because he's had a big hand in it. So, look, he's a massive play for most people. In a classic competition, I'd be looking to throw plenty of salary on him. If your opponents are only putting a gold or a platinum on him, you'd be wanting to at least match that or go one level higher if you possibly can, because we're expecting him to have a massive score. Outside of that, we've got 4 other options on the board there with Munster, Hughes, Trindle, Reynolds. Nicho Hynes is probably the preference, but of those other 4, which way are you leaning if you are going Hynes as well?
Yeah, I'm definitely going Nicho Hynes, definitely going Cleary. For me, I'm probably pairing those two or adding the third in of Cameron Munster. I sort of went back and forth between Hughes and Munster, and I think obviously Hughes with the injury cloud. Again, I talk about it almost every week that I find it difficult for a coach to put a player in when they're half cooked, when they're half baked, and they're not quite back to their 100%. So I would really find it difficult to not think that Hughes is at full health. But, I guess it is a finals and you do everything you can to win. But in saying that, I'm still going to run with Munster, even if Hughes was at full health. I think just Munster up against top 8 sides this season, he's averaged 48. But then against the Sharks, he's notched that up to 64 across 2 games this season. So I think he likes playing against the Sharks a little bit more than other teams. The Sharks are pretty consistent in allowing points to halves as well, and on both sides of the field. Top 8 halves have averaged just above 40 on both sides. So I think the benefit is that if Hughes does play, Money averages 46.5 in base and over 1 try assist per game and 3.5 missed tackles. Without Hughes, Munster actually has a little bit increase in base and power, and that's mainly through his kicking. His try assist decreased to 0.7, and his missed tackles average goes up to 4.5. So if Hughes does remain in that side and has a big part to play, it actually helps Munster with his running game and the other things that he does on the park as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Money has a couple of try assists, gets that 40-odd points in base and power, and tries to reduce those missed tackles as much as he can. I'm pretty excited about the whole Storm spine coming back together as well. It feels like it's been a while since we've had those 4 boys and Grant, Munster, Hughes and Pappy back together. So I might even sneak a bit of a Munster prize card into the mix as well. I know that it's not a card that many people own, so that might go into my classic side as well and give me some extra points. Hopefully, if Munster has a big game, I might sneak that in there, just giving away a little bit of strategy to everyone that's watching.
So that would be a diamond version, a 1.4 for the cost of just a silver card in your classic?
That is correct. That is correct. So, hopefully Munster has a big game. And obviously I'll pair that with a Cleary with heaps of salary as well. So I'd have to go bronze for majority of the rest of my side. But it just gives me some options there as well to have a couple of silvers.
Yeah, nice. Sif Kanga is going that direction as well with Cleary, Hynes and Munster. Look, I can't fault that either. I think Cam Munster's all but a slam dunk play this week as well. If Hughes or Pappy or both are even slightly underdone, it just means more work, more responsibility for Cam Munster. He dominated week 1 against the Dogs. He comes in fresh. This is a must-win match. They're at home. He's a big game player. Everything just aligns for a massive Cam Munster game. And he'll want to get the boys through to next week with Pappy and Hughes a little bit extra time to rest than either the Broncos or the Panthers. Obviously, if they do get up this Friday night and the Bronx Panthers on Sunday. So, yeah, he'll be the main responsibility for this Storm outfit, and he'll put them on his back if he needs to.
And we've seen that plenty of times from him before. Look, if people are looking here and they've got, I like Hughes and I like Reynolds a little bit more. Have a look at the fact that Hughes dominated the Sharks game in round 17 earlier in the season, scoring 91.7 points. So if you feel like he's all good, then maybe that's a potential option for you. And then Reynolds has actually averaged 51 against top 8 sides this season. So I think he could be a big pod potentially for players as well. Similar to what Mel's just commented, she's got a mix. She's got Cleary, Hines, Munster. I'm throwing out a Reynolds in a different comp instead of Munster. So I think that's a good shout there, Mel, having that, again, diversifying your players across a couple of competitions. So it means you can hedge your bets and you don't necessarily miss out on a big score if it happens.
Nice, like it.
Alrighty, let's jump into the centres. We are flying through this tonight. Obviously, only 4 teams to choose from, so not as many decisions that need to be made. But here's something here's a position really that you're taking a bit of a risk on potentially. Maybe it's a bit of a calculated risk. Tell everyone what you're doing, mate. I'm surprised it's happening.
Yeah, for probably the first time all season, to be honest, I'm not going to be running 3 fullbacks, at least in my main team. I'm not going to do it across all 4 in case it completely blows up in my face. But look, I'm going to run 3 centres at the expense of, I'll give this name away now, but you can probably all guess. It's going to be Dylan Edwards. We'll talk a bit more about him later on because you're obviously playing him. So you're going to be talking in favour of him. I just think he's been a lot slower lately. He looks fatigued. He's not translating to fantasy points like he has, but the team don't need him to. They're winning matches and he's scoring his 20s and 30s without having to do too much. They're still scoring on either side of the field. He's still playing a really similar role. It's just not translating to fantasy points. He's just looking a little bit slower, a little bit more tired, making a few more errors, that sort of thing. So I'm going to look at taking on some positional strengths or matchups by playing 3 centres. And those 3 are going to be Paul Alamotti. I think most people will have clued onto him by now if they hadn't already played him last week. But he's massive, 115 and 3 tries, 250 run meters, 9 or 10 tackle breaks. He was just outstanding. Him and Bizza on both sides of the field are an absolute cheat code for rugby league team, I think, particularly when he's playing like that. He probably won't score his 3 tries, but look, if he can get anywhere near that 200 run meters, he's going to be a chance of breaking tackles each and every run. I won't talk about all of mine at once. I am playing 3. Start with Paul Alamotti. I'm also going to play Tony Staggs and KL Iro before we get into those guys. Anything you want to add on with Alamotti?
Yeah, before I do talk about Alamotti a little bit, we spoke about him at the prize card draft off screen. And what I'm going to do is throw it out to everyone watching. If you can guess Alamotti's age without Googling it, we might have to find a prize for you. So if you can guess his age or you know his age without Googling, make sure you drop it in the comments as well. Yeah, look, Alamotti for me, the concerning thing, I guess, is the Broncos only allowing 27 to right wingers from the top 8 when they've played. But Alamotti's averaging 55, almost 56 on the wing against top 8 sides this year. And that's obviously been inflated with that 115 last week. But it wasn't just the 3 tries, as you say, that's impressive. It was the 250 run meters, the 5 line breaks, and the 9 tackle breaks that he made. Obviously, that is a different side that they're going to come up against now in the Broncos. But if he can replicate, a third of that, a half of that, then maybe a try on top of that. And we're sort of looking at that 50 to 60, and we'd be pretty happy with that as well. So yeah, Alamotti for me is someone that I'll be locking into my side, as is Katoni Staggs up against the Panthers. The Panthers allow 42.5 to right centres from the top 8, and that's 7 more points than the left side attack against the Panthers. So I think that they're really vulnerable. We talked about Preston from the Doggies and had a massive game there. And so we obviously can see their vulnerability to that left side. Katoni does come into this with an average of 43.5 against top 8 sides. And he's also another player that had a really massive game in week 1, scoring 85 against the Raiders. So hopefully that combination of Jordan Ricky and Tony Staggs down that right side just causes a bit of havoc for the Panthers defense. And dare I say, maybe they both have a big game and have quite a big score and come away with maybe a try each as well.
Yeah, those 4 right-sided players for the Dogs all scored tries in Kiraz, Cherry, Galvin, and Preston. So the left side there of the Penrith Panthers are definitely going to be where the Broncos want to attack. So Tony Staggs playing at right centre is in a perfect position. We also saw him being used in a different part of the field as well. He sort of swept across to the left-hand side and ran at some of the smaller halves on that side of the field as well. So it's nice to see the Broncos using him in some different ways and keeping things creative close to the line there. The story of the Broncos is it's a bit of a difference between the first 26 weeks of the competition and the last month, really. I don't want to take too much away from the first 26 weeks. It's all about their past month. When we talk about Reece Walsh shortly, I'll just put a little bit of a caveat on that. But yeah, the Broncos are flying. Tony Staggs is a key contributor for that alongside Reece Walsh. And if there to be any chance, they're going to score points down that right-hand side of the field as well as their left. But Katoni's going to get his hands on 1 or 2 of those, I think. And he's going to break some tackles and he's going to be a big part in this game on Sunday, Arvo.
Yeah, for sure. All right, mate. Well, we've talked about the 2 that we're both playing. So Kale Iro is your other centre that you're going to play. Talk us through why he takes your fancy.
Yeah, look, he reminded fantasy owners just how damaging he can be in the week gone against the Raiders. It was his first real big game in about 6 weeks since returning from that pec injury. He bounced back nicely, 200 run meters, 6 tackle breaks. He scored a try, albeit quite dubious in the second half there. But look, he was a guy that everyone was playing regardless of matchup for that first 10 weeks of the season, not just because he was scoring a try game, but because he was getting through so much base and looking really strong at such a young age while doing so. If the Storm are defensively weak somewhere, it is on their right-hand side, and Kale Iro playing at left centre will hopefully take advantage of that. Jerome Hughes is on that right-hand side. He's probably the most susceptible in terms of injury at the moment. He can't be 100% fit. I keep saying it. There's got to be a sore shoulder and a sore wrist or a forearm in there if he does take the field. So I think the Sharks are going to direct plenty of traffic that way. And Kale Iro is going to like that one-on-one matchup if he can get in front of Jerome Hughes with a little bit of space, a little bit of time. So, yeah, I'm not expecting him necessarily, score a double or a hat trick. I just think he'll find plenty of base. There might be some upside with a try or maybe a try assist to Ronnie, given that the Storm have leaked some tries, to left side opposition centres and wingers. But look, yeah, it's just all about Edwards for me. I just can't keep going back to him in my main team, given how bad he's been. And he hasn't needed to stand up at all because the Panthers are just getting it done elsewhere on the park.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Look, just on that as well, like you said, the Storm allowing some tries down that left side. They actually allow 42% of their tries to be scored down the left side of the field against the Storm. So that's a big side there for both, like you said, Ito and then Ronnie Muatalo as well. And it's sort of, when I read that, it sort of made me start to think, do I look for someone like Muatalo potentially going over a couple of times with sort of, obviously we're going to talk about one winger in a moment that everyone's going to have, but there's a few other wingers that we could play. So yeah, I think definitely if I don't play Muatalo, I think Ito will find a place into a couple of my sides as well. Just back to my question, Alamotti, his age, Melissa's jumped in and she's shouting it from the rooftop. He's 21. Mel even knows the day that he was born, January 2004. Well done, Mel. That is correct. I cannot believe that Paul Alamotti is that young. I feel like he looks about 40, and I feel like he's been around for a long time between the Dogs and Penrith as well.
Yeah.
Good on you, Mel. Good on you. Obviously, you know your footy. Alrighty, into the wingers. And as we talked about, one main man is on everyone's minds, and that's Brian To'o. He's just an absolute lock for me, and probably another player that's going to be a salary pod. I'd say everyone's going to play him. So it means that let's get an advantage by putting some salary onto him as well. In the regular season, Bizza averaged 51 against top 8 sides. However, he's really taken his game to sort of that next level. particularly in the final series, he's combined for over 150 GDS points across those 2 games. And look, it might coincide with the fact that he's moved to the left side of the field. Maybe that's making a big difference. Sort of I think it's his favoured side, and he's spent quite a bit of time on the left side in the past. So I think that's really where he's thriving and getting everything done from that left side. It also might be beneficial this week because the Broncos allow more to left wingers than their right side counterparts. And if we just look back to Magic Round, Milky Jenkins racked up 76.5 GDS points against the Broncos. So that's all the way back in round 9. So hopefully Bizza can replicate some of that magic. But Milky Jenkins sort of stepped up and showed himself to the competition in that game. So, yeah, hopefully Bizza can do something similar, if not better.
Mate, he was absolutely elite on Sunday in that thumping of the Dogs. Surely he's going to be 100% owned as the clear and obvious winger. The only teams that aren't rolling out a Brian To'o is the teams that don't own a Brian To'o card. I'm sorry, it's that obvious that he is a must play. You'll be a pretty brave person if you've got a Brian To'o card and you decide to look elsewhere, not just because of how good he is, but also given the other options. And you can see a number of those other options on the screen there, Dill. We don't have a lot to pick from. You have to scroll down quite far in terms of the overall averages for all players season long to find any of these names. But I think some coaches are going to diversify here, or if you can pick the right one on this list, I think that'll go a long, long way to winning some of the weekly competitions. So we've got the 2 Melbourne wingers in Xavier Coates and Will Warbrick. Of that lot, I like Xavier Coates on that left-hand side, although he only scored about 28 compared to Warbrick's 77 in game 1. And then we've got 2 options there from the Sharkies, Ronaldo and Sione Katoa. We've said before about the left-hand side probably being the side to target there for the Sharkies with Kaoliro, or if you don't have a Kaoliro, it might pay to put Ronnie there as your second winger. But yeah, look, 4 really good options before even talking about Dean Mariner, who if the Broncos can get on a roll, he can certainly find tries in patches as well. So, yeah, at the moment, for all intents and purposes, it's Xavier Coates for me on the wing, but I think he might be in 2 teams max, and I'll have to find a way to get Ronnie and maybe Will Warbrick in 1 or 2 of them as well.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'm leaning Coates in the main competition, similar to you, and having a look. Mainly it's the try scoring upside, and we look at the volatility, I guess, of the winger spot and the lack of potential base stats that they can rack up, although Brian To'o and a few other wingers are a little bit different than a lot of others in that sense. But someone like Xavier Coates really relies on that try scoring ability. And look, I think all the way back to when we talked about the Queensland versus New South Wales competitions, and we're talking about Coates really needing a try or 2 to get a big score, and he went out and scored a couple across that series as well, and ended up with a pretty decent score. In the regular season, he has averaged 1 try per game for the Storm, whereas if we compare that to the Sharks winger pair, they've averaged 1 try every 2 games between them. So there's definitely some upside there of Coates potentially scoring. And as I said, the Storm allowing 40% to their left side in terms of tries. The Sharks also allow 40% of their tries down the left side. So again, Coates potentially an option to go maybe 1 or even 2 tries in that game. Obviously, with the weather around it, it might put a little bit of a dampener on that slightly, but I still see Coates having a big performance. And maybe that weather actually helps him a little bit in trying to get up above in the air, maybe, and come down with a try or 2 over the line. In terms of potentially looking at whether you play someone like Muatalo or Sione Katoa, they're very similar in their stats. In terms of their averages for the season, Muatalo 31, Katoa 36. The Storm allowing 33.5 to left side wingers versus 41 to right side wingers. The difference for me is Sione Katoa is averaging 6.5 tackle breaks per game, whereas Ronnie is only averaging 4 tackle breaks per game. But then again, on the other side, Ronaldo Muatalo has scored 8 tries in his last 5 games, whereas Sione Katoa has only crossed the line twice in his past 5. So they're really similar in terms of all of their stats. So it's just going to come down to whether, I guess, coaches think is the left side going to be more dominant for the Sharks? And I tend to think so with some of those stats around try scoring against Melbourne Storm. So for me, yeah, if I was going to go somewhere else, I'd probably go Muatalo. But I wouldn't put it past anyone to want to play Sione Katoa as well with those stats of 6.5 tackle breaks per game. I think that's enormous for a winger.
Yeah, if the weather is okay and there are some crossfield kicks, we know that Munster is an absolute weapon at setting up Xavier Coates in the air, and he's actually got a really nice matchup there. Again, that'll be against Sione Katoa. It'd be more even on the other side of the field with Warbrick up against Ronaldo. So the advantage there is the heights of Coates over Sione Katoa. So yeah, maybe another reason for a tick for Xavier Coates is that he's much more of a threat in the air.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm going to run with To'o and Coates, and then maybe have Ronnie sort of in a couple of spots as well. Warbrick's an interesting one. Obviously, he had that big game in that first week of finals, and potentially I might find a space for him too. Potentially, I'll see how that goes. I still don't mind Sione Katoa in 1 or 2 competitions as well, just for a bit of difference and potentially getting a big score there. Alrighty, on to the big one and the fullbacks. You're going to be running out 2 fullbacks for the first time this year. I'm going to do the same, but I'm also going to pair them with Dylan Edwards. And I guess that means that Dylan Edwards, for maybe the first time this season, will be considered a point of difference because you're not playing him. And I think that's the only difference in our team is him and then KL Ero in your side. Look, like you said, he's got scores of 26 and 27 in his last 2 finals games against the Warriors and Bulldogs, which is a little bit concerning considered the Panthers combined to score 70 NRL points across those 2 games, and he had very little to do with it. I guess before that, the final series, Edwards averaged 57.5 against top 8 sides with a high of 82 and a low of 32. The scary thing is that 32 did come against the Broncos earlier in the season. So I guess that's not great stats when you look at those. The other concerning stat for me, for Dylan Edwards, and it really doesn't bode well for me, is 37.2. And that is the average GDS points allowed by the Broncos to opposition fullbacks from top 8 sides. And that's the lowest out of all 4 of these finals competitors. So the decision then is, do we play those 3 fullbacks? Do I stick with Dylan Edwards knowing that he potentially got that base in him and he does have that opportunity to sweep around and set a couple of tries up, which we have seen in the past? I'm a little bit concerned, and those stats don't really jump out at me as wanting to play Edwards, except for the fact that he scored almost 60 against top 8 sides throughout the season. So we know that he can do it, and maybe he's just not needed to so far. And maybe this game he feels like, or he knows that he's going to need to step up and have a bigger role in this game.
You just know he will, since I've come out and said I'm not playing him and he won't be in my main team. And look, he hasn't looked anything like his regular self over the last couple of matches and even leading into the finals as well. I think he only had 1 decent score in his last 3 or 4 games of footy. But yeah, look, the Panthers are getting it done, and they haven't needed him to run his 250 or 300 metres with 10 tackle breaks. He hasn't had to set up those tries on the right-hand side of the field. They're getting it done elsewhere. And at the moment, if he's just being safe under the high ball and getting that first or second carry or the carry before the 5th, that's his job at the moment, and they're not relying on him as much as maybe he has had to in the past. Yeah, I'm not really sure why his fantasy output has plummeted so much, but I'm hoping that run continues for at least 1 week longer. Mate, let's talk Reece Walsh.
Oh, yeah.
Absolute must, I'd say. But look, I am going to temper expectations. I don't know if we're going to see another 100-plus score. I think I might have said this once or twice already in the last 6 months of footy. But look, he won't get a huge amount of salary for me, let's put it that way, in some of the lower-tiered competition, simply because of this new team makeup for the Brisbane Broncos. Look, if they ran out 1-7 like they had in the past month of footy, it would have been absolutely, Reece Walsh, load up. He's in for another big one. But the big factor here is Adam Reynolds, and it sounds silly saying it, but him back in the team could actually be a bit of a hindrance for Walsh and Walsh's output in terms of fantasy point scoring, as silly as that might sound. In 14 games this year with Reynolds, he's averaged 130 running meters, just under 3 tackle breaks, and he scored 7 tries, so 1 try every 2 games. Compared to no Reynolds in the past month of footy, 108 running meters, so an extra 70, 10 tackle breaks, an extra 7, and he scored 1.25 tries per game. He scored 5 in those 4. So make of that what you will. A lot of those games were, must win, do or die against some very tough opposition. The numbers are clearly saying he's much better without Reynolds on the field, where he can just sort of command the ball and get the ball where he wants. You'd expect Reynolds to take on a bit more leadership and ownership with the ball, and he's got to be watching the last month of footy, though, and know Reece Walsh has to get it whenever he wants it. I just don't know if we're going to see the exact same Walsh we have, and therefore he's not going to get full salary for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Look, in my notes, I've said, does Walsh continue to get ball in hand early, or does he return to that sort of sweeping fullback that remains under pressure? And I think, look, I know Reynolds is back, and those numbers really highlight that Walsh has been much better without Reynolds there. But I think the difference really is that Walsh was lining up at first receiver and getting ball in hand earlier. And if the coach and the players around them are smart, they're going to continue to do that whether Reynolds is in the side or not. So for me, I still think Walsh is a very good play. And like you say, I still think it's hard to fade Walsh in any way. But you might just, like you say, temper expectations a little bit, not put as much salary on. But I just can't see a world where Walsh doesn't still continue with that role that we've seen him play, where he has averaged in the last 5 games a ridiculous 106. Plus, on top of that, we've got to remember that the Panthers' ubiquitous vulnerability to opposition fullbacks, they're still allowing 50 GDS points to opposition fullbacks, across the whole competition, as well as just the top 8. So there's still that vulnerability there. They still don't know how to defend against fullbacks, and I think Reece Walsh is still going to have a big hand and a big part to play in this game. And like you said, based on those stats where he's never beaten the Panthers side, he probably knows that, and he'll probably want to make sure he changes that, and he'll do everything he can. Does that mean he has more errors in him because he's trying just that little bit too hard? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. We probably do expect him to retain the kicking duties, you'd imagine. Reynolds down with that hamstring injury, maybe rush back a week too soon. Who knows? But you'd probably expect Walsh to retain the kicking duty. So if there are points being scored, if it is a bit of a free-flowing game with plenty of tries, a bit of a shootout, you'd expect, a bit of safety there in some goal-kicking numbers once again. But look, this is going to be a fantastic match of footy. Let's just hope for Broncos fans and Walsh owners that Reynolds doesn't hinder or stifle him too much in attack. We want to see the best team win, obviously. It's super hard to pick, but I think Mel might have asked earlier who we were backing in terms of our predictions. I think you said earlier Storm and Penrith. I'm going the same. I'm expecting a bit of a tighter battle, lower point scoring on Friday night with a bit more open footy, maybe a few more points being scored Sunday arvo, and coming down to 1 or 2 key plays to determine the outcome. Melissa's also asked or just mentioned Dill Edwards looks pretty average in a team that's been looking so good.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know if he's just a star within the team of superstars or he's just not that great. And I've said a bit before that a number of these Penrith players are really good sort of system footballers, and the system is so good that they just absolutely shine. And that if they go into rep footy, if they play test footy or change clubs, they don't quite hit the same standards or the same peaks as they might have done in that Penrith system. We saw just how poor Dylan Edwards was for the Kangaroos last season, and he wasn't good for the Blues either. And there was a lot of calls for Teddy to come back into the fray there for the New South Wales Blues team. So maybe Mel's onto something. Maybe he's just not that great. Maybe it's the system that's making him that good. All right, Dill, the third fullback there on our list, Ryan Pappenhausen. You obviously have a lot of positive things to say about this guy, particularly given that I'll let the viewers know, particularly those that weren't watching. What can you tell us about Ryan Pappenhausen?
Yeah, well, firstly, if you haven't watched the prize card draft, make sure you jump across to the GameDay Squad YouTube channel and check that out. Both you and I did have a couple of picks in that prize card draft, and with my 33rd pick, I did pick up a Ryan Pappenhausen. So I'm really looking forward to getting that card in hand. Unfortunately, I don't get to use it this week, But that is okay. I will still definitely be playing Ryan Papenhuyzen this week. He hasn't had a super strong season. I guess we probably had higher expectations of how he would go throughout the year. Obviously, there's been some sort of stop starting as well. But he's really struggled against top 8 sides, especially against the Sharks. He's only scored 19 and 36 against them, and that was in round 11 and 17. Obviously, Pappy's had a few weeks off, and he'll be keen to get the ball back in his hands and just get a few runs under his belt nice and early, so he can shake out any cobwebs and get straight into that. And hopefully we see that real big return of his meter eating, his tackle breaking, and try scoring best. At one point, he was averaging above 1 try per game, and I think that sort of in that middle section of the season, it dropped just below 1 per game. So hopefully he can get back there and maybe get a couple of tries in this game. The Storm are heavy favourites, and they're predicted to score quite a few points. I think the total at the moment is around about 45 for the game, and I think 25 or 28 of those points are meant to be scored by Melbourne. So I think there's going to be every opportunity that Pappy has a lot to do with the scoring, whether that is a try himself, a try assist, or then kicking goals as well. Hopefully he does have those goal kicking duties. That'll be interesting to see whether that happens pre-game, and if it doesn't, maybe there might be a late little pivot from me as well, potentially. Although, like I said, with Edwards there as well, I don't know if I could just run the one fullback. I think I'd be pretty nervous about just having Walsh in my side.
Yeah, so much upside in that Melbourne Storm team. I don't think I can leave Ryan Papenhuyzen out. The week off would have done him personally wonders, obviously recovering from any knocks, but also that head knock as well. I'm excited to see what he can produce this week. There's a world where, everything clicks for the Melbourne Storm and they just run away, with an 18 or a 24 point lead early in that match after 20 or so minutes, and the game's almost dead and buried. And you wouldn't be surprised to see something like that. And that's when he would, have an absolute blinder to start that match. Even if it is a tighter game in the colder and maybe some wetter conditions. Look, yeah, so much upside. They're playing at home. It's a must-win match. They've got plenty of finals experience. Sharkies have, perennially been known as the chokers of some finals football. They are putting some good games back to back. But look, this is all set up for the Melbourne Storm to get back into to another grand final. And can they be the team to knock off the Penrith Panthers? I don't think if the Penrith Panthers do get to the grand final, I don't think the Sharkies have much chance. I think if anyone's going to have a red hot crack at them, it would be the Melbourne Storm. So yeah, Pappy will have plenty to say this week, and we'll probably be talking about him next week as well as a big play in our teams.
Do you reckon, just on the Storm, do you reckon one of our mates, Reese, who is a massive GDS fan as well, do you reckon he's also a massive Melbourne Storm fan? Do you reckon he'll be watching the game, or do you think he might keep it off until the end to see what the result was?
He'll probably be watching some sort of movie, won't he, during the game?
Yeah,
what movie do you reckon he'll be watching?
Some rom-com, no doubt. He loves a rom-com. He'd prefer to watch that and then find out what the score was at the end of the game. He gets too nervous otherwise. I don't understand.
Bizarre areas.
All right. If you are sitting there and you do not own a Walsh, Edwards, or Papenhuyzen card, the only other option is to play Will Kennedy. Or look, the other option is probably to give us a message and we can sort you out with some cards. But Will Kennedy's the other fullback there, and he's averaged 30 against top 8 sides this year, and he now faces a Storm side who do allow 50 to opposition top 8 fullbacks. But unfortunately, Will Kennedy, look, he's played the Storm twice this year, and he's come away from those with an average of 23.
Talking about Will Kennedy.
I know. I've got to do it, mate. Someone out there will want to play him. Look, Will Kennedy's come away from the 2 Storm games with an average of 23.6 points. So, yeah, if you were thinking about it, I suggest maybe there's other options there. Maybe just don't play a fullback instead.
Yeah, enough about Will Kennedy. Melissa says there's every chance Reese might be watching Titanic. Yeah. Good film. Yeah, that would definitely be right up his alley. All right, Dill, on the screen, like you mentioned, not many differences between our squads. If you want to sneak peek at who Dill and I are running out in our number one, who would your number one team be, Dill? Who are you saying that this is your obviously, we can't show you our salaries that we're putting on players, but who's your main team? Who are you trying to win the overall competition?
It was classic, but for some reason my challenger side just has seemed to be a little bit better. I think maybe playing a few pods and just being a little bit different has meant that, I'm now in that sort of striking territory around that sort of 7th spot where I might be able to make first. And I think this week's going to be a big week to see if I can get it a little bit closer. Like I said, I've got to make up just less than 100 points. So, yep, challenger for me. So it means I can be quite versatile there with a lot of the salary that I do have and play, a couple of different types of cards and some special cards in that as well. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see how the finished product of my team looks. But that will be, who's going to be in the side. It's just going to be around that salary. What about you, mate? Are you the challenger as well? Or are you going to go with that champion comp?
Yeah, challenger as well. I got a soft spot for the challenger competition. I finished second there for the season. Champion, too many good coaches running out red cards as well. So it's a bit tougher to compete up there. And I got a few special cards as well that are very handy in the challenger competition. So I'm with you there. So this is a look at our challenger squads, obviously minus the salary or the rarity of cards that we're putting into our teams. But as you can see, the one difference there, I'm going for Kaoliro on the bench, opting against Dylan Edwards. And I guess we'll know midway through Friday night if that paid off or not. Yeah. And if he doesn't get a very big score, I'll be nervous about what Dylan Edwards can produce on Sunday afternoon. Let's hope he's nice and quiet as well, if that's the case.
Just quickly, obviously we're not going to give away all of our salaries across each of the players, but if you were to pick one player from that list, I know we talked about a few that would get some salary. Who's probably your number one salary pod this week?
Yeah, look, it would have been Payne Haas if he didn't limp off the field 2 or 3 times against the Raiders. He did obviously come back and finish that game, but there were definitely some concerns. He looked down and out. He looked just about gone at one stage there in the game. I don't know if he's fully fit. He's definitely sort of got a little bit of a niggle that he might have to manage over the past 2 weeks. Long story short, I'm going to say Eli Katoa as a massive salary pod. A lot of coaches might just run out just a bronze and look to put some higher salary on the likes of Walsh, Haas, Cleary. I think he's in for a big game. I think if you can put a platinum or at least a gold on him in some of those, in a challenger competition, I think that might be a good bit of differential across the rest of the coaches.
Yeah, I like it. And it's sort of down the same thinking, down the same line as me. I'm actually looking at Brian To'o to get quite a lot of salary. And look, if I was in the contender competition, I'd put gold on him straight away. And I'll be looking to load up in a few other areas because I think he's going to be 100% owned. So I think that, I'd rather just take the points no matter what he gets. Look, and just on Payne Haas, Mel has commented that he was just acting. He's fine. She must have the inside word. She already knew Paul Adamotti's age. So I think she's all over it. So, yeah, maybe Payne Haas with all the salary this week. Unreal. Good on you, Mel. Alrighty, on to Bro Down Showdown. And like we said last week, we did something a little bit different. We were going to head-to-head in each game. And would you know it, it's probably the first time we've got super close. We ended up 2-2. We did say the tiebreaker was going to be the highest scoring player. And unfortunately for me, that was Jacob Preston. So it means that Stu comes away with the win there. Also, fortunately for a lot of punters out there weren't many names that put you down as potentially winning. So it just means that there's only 4 on our wheel today. So an unreal opportunity for someone here. So let's get the wheel up and let's have a look. We've got Sif Kanger, we've got Skippers, Jay Boney as always, and Tom H who have gone for you. So good luck to those 4. Let's see who's won. And it's going to hold on there. It is going to be that man, Jay Boney.
Congratulations, Goat. Well done, Jay Boney.
Well done. Alrighty, let's jump across. And because it's almost time for the grand final, should we do something a little bit special for Jay Boney?
Let's do it. Absolutely.
I've got a couple of all-stars, so let's jump and open a 9-player all-star common. And let's see if we can get Jay Boney an all-star card today. How would you like to do this, mate? Obviously, you win a couple of cards and the rest can go to Jay Boney. What do you reckon?
I love the middle card. I want to know what's in the middle card. I'll take that one, please.
Okay, here we go. We've got a gold there for you. A nice Matt Dory there. Well done, mate. Congratulations. He will be real. All righty. That means, Jay Boney, you get the rest of these. So let's have a look at what we've got. All right. Not bad. The Jonah Pezzett there. That's a good card for the future for sure. We're looking for an all-star, though. We want to get an all-star. Up to the last card. Spin the chair around. Unfortunately not. So the Jonah Pezzett probably the best one there, mate, and maybe the Josh King as well. He could be usable. Sorry about that, Jay Boney. Unfortunate, mate. Unlucky there, but mate, still an opportunity to win some more cards and win some more prizes with another Bro Down Showdown. Once again, we're going to head-to-head in each game as well as in each team. So if you think my combination of Munster, Brayley, Walsh and To'o will get up over Udikamanu, Hines, Haas and Cleary, make sure you comment me. If you think Stu's going to dominate again, make sure you comment Stu. And we'll spin that wheel again next week, which is our final show for the season for Rugby League. Who can believe that we are here? We'll have to do something pretty special next week, I think. Maybe we might have to have a couple of special guests on and do a couple of other things around the show for sure. What do you reckon?
Keen. Let's do it.
As well, I mentioned at the top of the show, I had something to tease happening off season. Look, we are going to get together as a Fantasy Bros off season, and we're going to do something a little bit special. I know there's been a few comments being thrown around in the Discord around the different sports games and consoles that you play. So we're going to look to get a bit of a challenge against the bros competition happening on your favorite console, whether that be PlayStation, Xbox, etc. And we're going to get a few sports games running in the off season. So we might get some rugby league, we'll get some AFL happening, we might even get some cricket going, or even some FIFA as well. So if you are keen on that, we'll put up an event and we'll get a day sorted, maybe a Saturday or Sunday in a few weeks' time, once all the rugby league and Aussie rules is over, and we've got nothing to do with our Saturday, Sunday afternoons. We'll get a few games out and we'll get some prizes happening as well. So keep an eye out for that. We'll get some info out to you soon. It'll be an awesome day. It'll be a bit of fun and hopefully another opportunity for the punters out there to beat us at some sport.
Beauty. Look forward to that.
Mate, while I've been saying that, you've got about 12 comments here that all
I know.
are going towards you, mate. No one is keen on me at all. Sif Kanga, Walkie, Smell, mate, I've got no support at all. I think
we know what happened last time.
Yeah. Mate, last time that happened, one person commented and they won. So,
yep.
Mate, you just never know what can happen. Unreal. Alrighty, that is it. Oh, Melissa's just commented at the end. Drinking is more than welcome. Will be streamed. Love it, Mel. That's I think I agree with that. A Saturday afternoon, a couple of drinks, maybe some rugby league, some FIFA. Look forward to it. Alrighty, as we said, the grand final preview show will be live next Wednesday, the 1st of October at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you are tuning in for that. It'll be a big show. Like I said, we might have a couple of guests on. I think we'll get maybe the other Fantasy Bros as well to make an appearance, and we'll have a bit of fun. Obviously, there won't be as many players to choose from, so we'll have some fun with a few giveaways, etc., on the show throughout the night. Thank you very much for joining us once again. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Let's hope the Storm and the Broncos get up so we can have a bit of a different final this year. And good luck with everyone's teams as well. Enjoy. Take it easy. Thanks.